E estamos no ar.
Hello, everybody. It's very nice to welcome over here today to this opening channel. This opening night, for me, it's a very special opportunity. Opportunity to bring together to you data science, education, and art. This channel will be a little bit different from the tutorials, channels, and everything that you have already heard. Our aim here is to bring you authors from books, from articles, and also from packages, in a way that you can understand what are their challenges, where are their thinking, where they may be getting into you, so that you can project yourselves and make new contributions to our languages, to data science, and to education. For this, I want to present you the authors from the book, Data Science in Education Using R. A very nice idea that come together with my friend.
O Boca Juniors vai enfrentar o Esporte Clube Internacional.
Google, doesn't matter. It won't be. We don't need to edit it. It's online. Okay, now I would like to introduce you my very friend Jesse Mostipek and their colleagues in this essay endeavor, or a fairy tale on how to write a new book, right? Please, Jesse, introduce yourself and pass the time to the others so that they can do the same. Please, briefly. I know you have already done a new live only for the book introduction. So we're gonna go around, but not saying the same things, so that the people goes over there and make audience also to your other live.
Okay. Thank you, Ariel. My name is Jessie Mostipek. I'm based in Dallas, Texas, and I'm a community advocate at Kaggle. And I was a high school science teacher for several years before I became a data scientist. I'll pass it to Josh.
Hi, everybody. My name is Josh Rosenberg, and I am an assistant professor of STEM education at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And I'm pleased to hand it off to next on my screen to Emily, if you don't mind.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Emily Freer. I am the Director of Educational Development and Assessment at the Marquette University School of Dentistry, which doesn't sound very data science-y, but I have fun.
Hi, everyone. My name is Isabella Velasquez. I'm a data analyst at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in Seattle, Washington.
Wow, I was right, huh? Most of you don't know each other. Rai is not over here because he's working, and he told me that he won't be able to attend. But maybe, who knows, he will come in for a few moments, huh? And we'll know all of you. It was a very pleasure to receive all of you today. And I would like you to explain to me the idea of the book, and also for our audience. The original idea, how did it come to you that it will be a niche to explore education in data science? Any of you?
I feel like Josh would have some really good insights. We always joke that Josh is the one who got us to write the book, and we got Josh to adopt a cat. So
come on, Josh.
Thanks, Jesse. Our cat is a lot of fun, by the way. And also, like last night, she escaped into the snow, and we had to like chase her. So, not sure what the takeaway from that is. But okay, so about the book. So, Ariel, the question was, how did we come up with the idea to write this book? What was its genesis? Its origin? Yeah, I mean, I could start, but I welcome others to please add on to this. Actually, so Jesse wrote a blog post more than 2 years ago now, in November of 2018, where Jesse demonstrated some of the challenge and some of the kind of excitement about analyzing educational data using R. So maybe like some listeners, you might work with data that's messy or private, or there's just a lot of different kind of angles to it. And so what Jesse did was say, in education, this is like a thing. Like if you're struggling with analyzing educational data, I am too, and it sort of served as an invitation for us to begin to talk about educational data. And from talking about educational data, we developed a group on the platform Slack, which I'm sure many know about. And we basically shared ideas and eventually said, what if we wrote a book that was open? And because a number of tools in R sort of makes this possible, it felt within the reach. It felt like we weren't sort of going from nothing to write a book. It sort of felt like there are these tools that can sort of help to scaffold us along the way. So it's kind of that's at least the part of the story. I don't know if that's really the most important part or even half of it.
So you got first for a data set, for example, and all of you work on it. That's it, and it's almost growing a chapter without knowing it's growing a chapter or something like this in the Slack, like a challenge, or you already have an idea. We're gonna work this from this path, so that we're gonna have a whole work on R. Which one was the main?
Yeah, it really developed. Everyone had ideas, and then a group decided they were interested in writing a book. And so there was a lot of conversation around what would we want in a book? Who would read this? What would they want to read? How much R would they know? What would we teach them? And then we ended up outlining the book and then deciding to work on different chapters. So if someone really wanted to do a walkthrough with machine learning, that was their chapter, but the entire group would be there to help and support and ask questions as they wrote.
Okay. By going through the pages of the book, I've seen the idea of the book growing up from the first beginning, where you explain a lot of the data science role in education. Why data science, and why R, especially why R? Why not Python or something else, once you know how you want to go for data science? And from the cover of the book, it becomes the challenge. If you go through that cover, if the people doesn't remember, I'm gonna put it over here. See, if you go through this picture over here in the cover, it's already challenging us for what kind of readers you would like to have in your to your book. See, the first beginning was for me when I first received the idea of the book, looking at it in the internet. And in the first moment, I decided to buy it. And I go ready for the site and buy it. And then Jesse comes to me and say, "But you can have it free." I know, but it's better to have it at the pages with me. See, whenever you're working on it. I love the books as books, not as pages in the internet. But that's my way. A teacher is like this, huh? But normally, what I was thinking is somebody that never have seen data, maybe. Maybe he is or she is only a teacher. Maybe a K-12 teacher, maybe a teenagers teacher, maybe undergraduate teacher or master teachers. Doesn't matter. Every teacher has a lot of data. Every teacher has a lot of questions in his methods, in his ways. and how to approve more people, how to get more success in the ways they're going to teach. And this book seems to me to make the first 4 chapters is to make everybody comfortable by reading the book and to be set on, let's say, on the set, on the working area without any problem. We only really look for in chapter 5, when you start to speak about RStudio. Till there, we are only looking around, making yourself comfortable, relaxing to get into the work. But as soon as you get into the work, you're gonna realize there's gonna be a lot of work. Because right in chapter 6, it might be only a course. If you go for a 1 month course, you can go in chapter 6 and you're gonna lose the month over there if you would like to. See, because you have a lot of things over there, from the starting of tidy data sets to visualization with ggplots. So it's a lot of things. And this was something they're interested in very much, because by the beginning, I was thinking, oh, they are going to go concept by concept, but this was not what we're getting over there. We're getting whole histories from beginning to end in each walkthrough from the chapter 7 on. Although chapter 7 is very introductory, it's a lot of challenge. And I would like to understand, why did you put 4 chapters in the beginning, and then you go from chapter 7 to chapter 14, from the basics to machine learning? Am I right? See? And if I was reading correct, it's not so difficult, because it's done in a way that the reader is going to be challenging, of course, because it's problem-based learning, right? You always put a problem for the people so they can understand what's going on, and putting them to work on it. It's a nice way to put the things. But I would like to understand, Josh, especially from you, how in this learning curve you can push someone from the basic introduction in R, in data science, and in education, to machine learning and education in R, in 7 chapters, in 7 walkthroughs.
Yeah. Well, maybe I could see. So our last chapter was written primarily or led by you, Emily. And so, to be honest, I feel like so much of our process was about this idea of accessibility, but also having a really complex topic. It never really felt intention for us. And so, Ariel, I find it really illuminating the way you walked us through. You spent 5 chapters sort of setting the foundation and establishing context, starting to share a language, and then we help you get set up in this foundational chapter, which I think is so important. Well, let me just ask the question. So, Emily, can you talk through maybe how you made the most sophisticated topic also accessible? Because I think you could speak to that better than I could.
Sure, I can try. Yeah, so I think, like Josh said, we were sort of thinking about this in terms of how would we guide someone if we were trying to help someone learn this. So we thought that people might browse through the chapters depending on what they are trying to do in their own work. So some people will work through the whole book from start to finish like you, because you're a completionist. But other people might feel intimidated by that prospect and think that they don't want to do it all quite at once. So we hoped that we would find things so that you could choose an interesting topic that you like and then dive deeply into it by learning through that chapter. So we tried to design the book so you could use it either way. You could pick as you go, or you could go linearly through it. Admitting, of course, like you said, it's a big jump to go from 0 to machine learning. So I had the benefit of my colleagues here writing those foundational chapters to make sure that people felt really comfortable first. Because I think that often what we've found interacting with others in the real world and trying to get people to use R, sometimes there's a really big barrier to just starting to use it. Because if you come up with difficulty right away, some people give up and decide it's too hard and they can't go on. So we wanted to make sure we lowered that barrier as much as we could at the beginning and then scaffold people up the stairs so that by the time they got to the machine learning chapter, they felt like, yes, I can do this. So I wasn't trying to write the chapter in a show-off way of, oh, look how sophisticated this is. Instead, we were trying to make it like, see, you can do this now. And this isn't actually a big, scary process like you thought it was. So we were trying to write it in a way that it really helps build the reader's confidence and then also shows them what they're capable of doing so they can figure out what they want to dive in and learn more deeply about even after they're done with the book.
I'm sure, Emily, that you were right in the way you do it, because from the whole book, although I think 7 chapters from 0 to 10, it's very much, but it's okay in the way that you did, because it's challenging, but it's not, how to say, frightening. You can go through it, see? It's only it's like a fairy tale that you go from a piece to the other. Once upon a time, I didn't know anything about our education, but now I can do machine learning on it, and it's very easy. It's very easy the way that you explain it, the way that you made, the way that you made it over there, the way that you write to the people. It's very interesting way so that people understand what's going on, chapter by chapter. As you said, I go through the book as not exactly linearly because I want to know everything that's going in, like in a novel. So if you see that all the chapters of the series in the Netflix, you never go for the first one and then you go to series. You go a little bit on the end so that you can understand what's going to happen in the end. It never goes for the or just linearly the series. See, that's my way. See, you like to know if the hero dies or no, so they are prepared. You don't have no suspense on it, and that's the same thing I thought with the book. See, I can see that there is a touch of different authors in each chapter because it's a different way of even about the ways the chapter looks like in the writing and things like this. Although you try very hard to put it all together as it was one piece, it's easy to see that someone have wrote more influence on this, and someone has more influence on that. Especially if you know some of the articles that I say or texts that I see from Jess and from others in the you have an article also, Joshua, on 2020, correct? And then we have a lot of different ways of writing down things, and we understand what's happening. But what was the challenge of putting everything together in a way, in such a smart way that people will, as I think, they will be volunteer to become from teachers to data science, as well as data science would like to understand a little bit more of education. Both ways are okay with this book, and your work are awesome on this, on provoking each way to be nice. So let's understand a little bit more. Jesse, will you come up? What was the challenge of putting everything together? Because it has to be a unit, and then it won't be a unit by everybody that doesn't know each other, each one writing whatever, even if it's the same database.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time talking, and ultimately what we did was we came up with user profiles. So we thought about who are the people that we are writing for. And it was because we found ourselves having these conversations like, do we teach statistics? What do we teach in R? How deep do we go into like creating packages? And then we thought about who will get them, who do we want to write for? Who will get the most out of this? And so we made up characters, and we thought about how much statistics do they know? Have they ever used programming? And how much do they know about education? And then we talked about what those people would be like. And then we all knew people who fit those profiles. And so Ryan did interviews with everybody and asked them different questions related to the book and what would be helpful and what would not be helpful. And so we used all of that feedback to really focus on what we wanted to write about and then pull it together that way. And we wrote, the group is really, really good about here's what I wrote, what do people think? And then getting really good, honest feedback from people who you respect and who you know care about your work. And so I think everybody helped with every chapter, but I think every chapter did have like one primary author.
Okay. And what was your chapter, Isabella? You are so quiet.
Yeah. My chapter, I worked a bit on the second walkthrough on starting to use joins and ggplot. And actually, that was one of the chapters where we started talking about, what does our book do? What does our book not do? Do we go into, say, like the assumptions that you need for linear regression, or do we, explain like how to do it in R, but then reference like other really amazing books that are already out there on that topic. And then my other walkthrough chapter was chapter 9, which explores real data from a school district in the US that, when you first look at the data, it looks like a very diverse school district. Lots of students and from different races and backgrounds. But then when you start to really dig into the data, you start to see the inequities that exist in the system where there are higher, disproportionate numbers of students of one demographic in higher poverty schools versus others. And those are I think one thing that we wanted to showcase throughout the different walkthroughs is this is what you can actually do with data. You take the concepts to apply it in a real life scenario. And these are the sorts of things, especially in the US, when you want to think about how to serve all students, fairly and equitably, that analysis in R gives you that opportunity to really dig into where should our efforts and our resources go, backed by data.
Thank you. And I know already, you go for the machine learning. I understand you. See, and what about you, Josh? Which chapter was yours?
Yeah, okay, I want to answer that, but I want to ask one more thing. Isabella, can you say a little bit about, so, Ariel, you were so kind to purchase our book and read it. I also have a copy of our book, and I was so excited to receive a copy of it. When we received our copies in the mail, it was thrilling. But in some ways, this doesn't capture the book, because the whole book was living. It was this machine, and Isabella is really responsible for that, I think. There are at least two parts of it that at least I'm familiar with. One is the process of kind of creating the book, the version that's available online. And then the second part was creating an R package that was sort of the guts of kind of powering everything. And so I'm wondering, Isabella, if you could talk about that a little bit, because it's related to how everything came together, I think. And it's kind of still the part that I feel like I don't even have my head around. It's this, it's just a part of the book that I think is really unique. And we were creating a program as much as we were creating a book.
Yeah, I think, one question raised earlier was why R? And, there are many programming languages out there, and, every tool has its pros and its cons. But I would say one big benefit of R is that there are so many fantastic open source tools that are built upon it. And having the ability to use Bookdown to create the book itself, rather than having to email back and forth Word documents, that hugely facilitated this process. Yeah, especially again, we actually have never met in person, right? And so we're doing everything online and through GitHub. And so the tools that already exist for R really really made a lot of things possible that I don't think like they would have been otherwise. Of course, like you could reproduce your code, and so like we can go back, fix mistakes, see what the earlier version looked like, and then re-edit it. And then the idea behind the package was to first like have try to like Jesse mentioned earlier, lowering the barriers to entry as much as we possibly could, and having the packages that are needed for the book analysis themselves in one place. And everything is also like a learning opportunity as well. Like installing a package can sometimes be tricky, but it is just like a fact of life, especially on Windows machines. And so we just try to like make it as accessible as possible, use all the amazing tools that we had at our disposal because of the R community and the R studio and all the organizations that work so hard. And yeah, that's kind of why like all these other products like came up besides just the book itself.
And if you have to name one concept that was really hard to teach, what will be it, and how did you prepare to do it?
No, go ahead.
Doesn't matter.
Well, I can name check our missing compadre here, our missing co-author, Ryan Estriado, who this is just one example. I'm sure Jesse, Emily, Isabel, you have others, but we wrote about multi-level models. And multi-level models are extensions of the more familiar regression model, or kind of line of best fit kind of model. And Ryan and I went back and forth on Slack many times, trying to find a way to describe what was going on and why this model was useful in a way that connected with readers and also made sense and was technically kind of accurate, but also was accessible and meaningful. And it was a really rewarding experience. I think Ryan and I both, looking back on it, liked having that dialogue. So that was one that comes to mind for me. And Ryan was just like pushing, like he would not take it being unclear. Like Ryan really wanted this concept to be not only part of the book and not only accurate, but again, kind of like something that connected with readers.
Well, there is something that I was looking at. I didn't remember to see. Did you put Shiny on the book as well? No. Why not? Because it's so useful for teachers. Don't you think so?
That'll be version 2.
Maybe in version 2. That's a promise. I'm gonna go for it. Also, I would like to understand from you. You show me that it's so important to know GitHub and to know about Bookdown, or let's say R Markdown. But I didn't see you go for GitHub in the book. Instead, for going for your GitHub and taking the things from there. But you don't teach it for the people as well. So for being a data science without GitHub or version control, it will be very difficult, don't you think so?
Yeah, definitely. GitHub is a big part of the workflow, but one of the things we did was look at all of the resources that already exist in the R community, and we could not write a better how to use GitHub than Jenny Bryan. Jenny Bryan and Jim Hester have the best, most accessible using R with Git and GitHub resources out there. And so I think that's one thing that made writing this book so much fun, was when we came up with things like, do we teach GitHub? And then we're like, Jenny and Jim wrote this beautiful open source book. Why would we try to, all we're going to do is copy that. So why not instead say, if you want to use Git and GitHub, it's an important part. Here is our favorite book on this topic. So.
Understand. And you told me from the second part, it's just a project? Is there just a project, or is already in? You're coming in for it right now, so that in 2 years we're gonna have the second book.
That was just a little joke, but I do think like there are, again, like deciding on the walkthroughs was definitely a process we had to go through, discuss, and then decide, what would be a reasonable number of walkthroughs for a person reading this book to go through versus what would be too much or too little. Can we cover the concepts that we did in the book? The idea of cleaning data, joining data, running models, visualizing data. But, the world of education data is so large. There is so much. And like you mentioned earlier, like the data that teachers have access to have a much different granularity than what's available publicly on the internet. There's survey data, there's mapping data, there's so many options, and and very, very early on, after the user profiles, the interviews, and deciding the audience, part of what we did is decide, what is the most critical things to start with in this book that is meant to introduce people to education data.
So you did a very good job, but I'm still challenging you to pick up the second edition. See, it will be very nice to have a book. Like Benjamin Franklin used to say, practice makes perfect. You already have practice. Now let's make it even more perfect, than the first one. Well, I would like to challenge you. What was the challenge that bring each of you to data science? Come on, you can be.
I'll start.
Okay.
I was in grad school with Josh, and I guess I don't know which direction he is on your screen. And a lot of the problems that we were solving with statistics, I wasn't using R or using other kind of traditional coding tools to solve. And that wasn't really the norm in my research group. But then Josh, being the persuasive guy that he is, he kept trying to get me to start using R for a little project so that I could see kind of the benefits of it, because I was one of those people that was really intimidated. So I don't remember specifically which project it was, but I remember sitting at my computer and Josh working with me one line of code at a time. Okay, what do you think this line of code will do? Okay, run it. What happened? And soon we had a visualization, and I was, oh my gosh, that really worked. You just did that, and I wrote it. And then that was the end. The ship had sailed. So I was hooked from that moment. So I think it helped to have Josh as a mentor for that. And I don't know if I'm supposed to tag somebody,
guilty,
but
huh?
Whoever feels.
He's completely guilty for bringing you to R.
Yeah. Well, I guess I can give credit to a few people. So I was, like Emily, a grad student at Michigan State, and I guess like two things I can mention. One is I was taking a class on multilevel modeling. Actually, what I just mentioned, the topic that Ryan and I were working on in the book, and in this class, you had to either purchase a software called HLM, which was developed sometime in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was expensive. It was difficult to use, and I didn't have any. I wasn't on a grant-funded project, so I didn't have an easy way to pay for it. You could also use SAS, I believe, or Stata. I believe many people use Stata. And Stata, yeah. Sorry. And the TA in the class also provided R code and said, I can support you to use R. And that was just like a door opening, because I didn't want to spend the money on the license, and this TA supported R. So that was like solving this problem of not being on a grant-funded project, having access to these tools. Second thing is that a student who came before me in my program, who's actually from the neighborhood I grew up in Michigan, Andrea Zellner, was using R for social network analysis. And so the seed was planted. It was sort of like Andrea was talking about R, the TA said, I'll support it. And so that was sort of why I started using it. The third thing I'll mention, and then I'll hand it off to Jesse and Isabella, is that I had a mentor in grad school, Lee Wolf. I'm so excited to get to mention Lee's name here, who was all about like open everything, open access, open sharing, open source software. And so I think for me, like not paying for software and choosing to use this open software was sort of just kind of in the air a little bit, because I had this mentor who was just all about things being open. Like for classes she taught, students would share their work on their websites, just little things like that that sort of just built this pattern of just like, hey, sharing things in the open is good. And that connects to the tools that we use, because if you use software that you have to pay for, that means that someone else who you share it with might have to use that software too. And so just all of these ideas made me inclined to using R. Sorry, that was long. And so Isabella?
And what about data science? You brought R to your life, but what about data science?
Oh, all right. So real quick, I'll say another name here. I had a colleague, Spencer Greenhall, who was interested in analyzing Twitter data. And even with a small amount of Twitter data, using Excel is cumbersome. And so we had collected around 10,000 tweets associated with a degree program, an educational technology degree program. It was people who were basically using a hashtag on Twitter to post about this program. They would ask questions, they would share things that they found, and we wanted to analyze this data. And so we started using R. So that was kind of more data science-y, where we were kind of doing text analysis and trying to count up interactions and start to look at who's interacting with whom. So using R in that course sort of served as a segue into using R for that project. And then things sort of took off from there.
So that's why we have the chapter 11, huh? The walkthrough with text analysis and social data, correct?
Yeah. So the social networks chapter I led, and the text analysis chapter Ryan led. Social network analysis and multi-level modeling. It's funny that I didn't really think of it this way, but those were the two classes I mentioned that I sort of started using R. Not classes, but contexts that I started using R.
I'm sure students will love it. I'm sure students will love it.
Yeah,
it's something to any student to achieve is to go to science data, to social data, and to learn about it, and how to, even web scraping is also something that they will love to. But Twitter is very nice to do it. And what about you, Isabella? Again, you are so quiet. See, I know if I let Jessie, she'll talk about anything. See, but you are so quiet. The first beginning, I thought she's comfortable now. She's going to come up every time, but she doesn't come. We have always to push her. Come on, and you, how did you get to data science and R?
Yeah, I'm happy to share. So in my previous role, I was working at a research organization, and we worked on large longitudinal surveys. And it was more on the operational side. So how do you actually run a survey so that respondents reply and take the survey, get their incentives and things like that. But what really interested me about the work was more like as I was working on the survey, like I came up with a lot of hypotheses, right? Like, are there certain demographics of respondents that are more likely to respond to the survey, and what interventions would be successful in bringing back people who haven't replied in 10 years or things like that. And at the time, like I was looking for grad programs, and I found out there's a field that kind of like tackles these sorts of questions with data. And so I did my program in analytics. And while I was there, that's actually where I learned R. And that was a very like special experience because they kind of, it wasn't a formalized curriculum. They were just kind of like, your homework is due. It's an R. Good luck. And you just kind of like sink or swim, learn how to use it. But I was very lucky in that my older brother is fantastic in R. He's very, very knowledgeable. And so he really helped me like, get the skills that I needed, learn best practices, and try out new things. And he actually introduced me to the tidyverse. I was base R for a very long time until he told me like, oh yeah.
So you're learning already in the tidyverse?
Sorry?
So you learn R already in the tidyverse?
Oh, now I have.
You come from the base.
I started in base R, and then he introduced me to the tidyverse, and now I've completely forgotten my base R, only writing headers. And so after that, that's once I finished my program, that's when I started looking for jobs that let me use data and analysis full time, and that's how I ended up in my current position.
I don't know you very nice, but I really do know Jessie a little bit because she has been to Brazil. If she didn't told you, she has been to SIR. That's the seminar, the international seminar in statistics with R that we run every year. This year, unfortunately, because of the COVID-19, we didn't have it. But for next year, for sure, we're gonna have it. And you are challenged to bring us for papers and for maybe a walkthrough course review. See, but I'll go for Jessie right now. If you don't know, you might have a hard time writing the chapters, but you haven't seen Jessie typing. If you have seen Jessie typing, you understand that she will do the whole chapter in 2 minutes, say, because she's very quickly typing things. Once I was working besides her while she was looking for it was a talk from a guy from Brazil, and she was taking notes. You can't imagine. You really can't imagine. You know Flash, the Flash.
Oh
You
yeah.
know the Flash. Yeah, that was her typing. See, so quickly. See? She has a lot of fans over here, and she might have to say hello for them. See, Jessie, in Portuguese, please.
Hola.
Okay? You know more than this, I know, but it's okay. You can do it.
Un poco.
Yeah. See, it's challenging as R and data science. So let's say, how did you came to data science and R, Jessie?
I was in between jobs and I was playing a lot of video games, and I really thought that maybe I could go into game design and program video games or do something involving programming in video games in some way. And so I started taking intro to programming courses at a local college and looking for volunteer opportunities on Twitter. And there was this company that was based in Dallas, and they were looking for someone to write blog posts. And I was like, well, it's a good foot in the door. So I wrote blog posts for them. And then they were like, do you know anyone who's good with math and statistics? And I was like, oh, I can do math and statistics. And they said, well, we're looking to hire someone to do this kind of work. Would you be interested? And I was like, yeah, sure. I didn't have a job. I was looking for a job. So I pulled together a presentation, and I remember thinking like, everything I read was like, oh, you should use Python, like Python for data science, Python for data science. And I spent a week trying to install Python, and I couldn't get it to install. And so I was like, well, I did R in grad school. Maybe I can do this with R. And so I downloaded R, I downloaded RStudio, and I was coding within a couple of minutes. So obvious to me then that I should be working in R. And so I ended up pulling together a presentation, doing a bunch of coding in R, and kind of like being able to pull resources from the internet. And I just loved it. And I ended up getting the job, moving to Texas, and then have stayed in data science since then.
Nice story. I'm going to challenge you a little bit more. If each of you were to teach data science with your book, how would you structure the classroom for doing this? Let's start again with Josh, because he's the one, correct, that's working with with the teenagers, correct? So this is the worst, I think. So that you might be the one that have the magic.
Oh gosh, no. I mean, I guess just a few quick thoughts. One is that trying to understand what you really want to be hard and what you don't want to be hard is something I think I'm thinking hard about. So for instance, installing packages is conceptually not that important. I mean, it's important that you understand that packages exist, but there's not a big idea undergirding install.packages and the name of the package, or searching for the name of the package within that pane in RStudio. In contrast to something that's relatively simple, but is a totally different kind of category of idea, like an if-else statement, which is, I mean, you can do something like if-else in Excel, but for kids learning that idea for the first time of like a conditional statement, it's a huge idea, and it's worth maybe spending a whole day or even multiple days working on what that kind of logic could do for you, versus spending a whole day trying to get a package installed, which is not really that rich conceptually. So I think that's just one big guiding idea, is like, how can we make some of those frustrating points easier? So for instance, I think using R Markdown is probably preferable to using an R script, because you can click render and see a result, and you can add text, and you can have text kind of already populated, so students can kind of read through and run different chunks and make changes and then run it again. I think RStudio Cloud is helpful for the installation related reasons. And I think focusing on trying to find out what students would find interesting is probably worth spending a lot of time on. And it's not trivial. You can't just say like, oh, kids are interested in sports, or kids are interested in whatever someone as old as I would think kids are interested in. I feel bad even trying to come up with ideas here. So I think those are just some ideas I have. And then I'm teaching a course on this topic to educational researchers next semester. So stay tuned. I'll try to share some of what I found. I don't have any other good ideas though, really. I'm wondering what others think about this.
What do you think about this, Jesse? That's your turn.
Yeah, I think when I teach R and I teach data science, it's really important to, we call it modeling. So I like to start, if we're going to build a R Markdown document, I like to start by showing the R Markdown document and saying, you know, at the end of this class, you're going to have something that looks just like this. And then I use kind of a process called I do, we do, you do. So I usually ask my learners to put their laptops at 45 degrees and then just watch. And I'm going to code something and I'm going to talk about what I'm doing. And I think that's a piece that is really helpful when you're teaching, is to talk about what you're doing and why you're doing it and how that all fits in. Because when you read someone's code, unless they've written a ton of comments, you don't know what they were thinking. And so if you talk about it as you code, it can be really helpful. And then that's the I do. And then what I do is I delete all of that. And then the learners open up their notebook, their laptop, and we all do the same thing again together. So we're doing it together, and as they have questions, we're answering it. They're working in groups. And then I usually put up a series of questions or kind of project steps. And then I turn everybody loose to work on it on their own or in a small group. So that's kind of a you do section. And what I really love doing when I teach is giving learners the opportunity to learn how to learn, so that they're not relying on me as an instructor, but they have developed the skills to go out and find resources and answer questions without me.
So that's what it for another question. But at first, I would like to know both of you in the top, because from you are in the top, Emily and Isabella. What do you think about it? How do you think to put up the classroom for data science?
I can go first
You can.
and then pass it to you, Emily. So one thing that we've tried at work, and that being said, my colleagues are very proficient in R. So I think first of all, like kind of gauging what level of programming exists in the classroom first. But using my coworkers as an example, who are very data savvy, like something that actually worked quite well is an internal hackathon. So we we booked out time months in advance, a whole day of just sitting in a room. And over a month, we collected hypotheses, wonderings, like things about the question or about the data set, and then listed them all out, and then just had a day to like really dig in. And I think the purpose was the primary purpose of the hackathon was first to get everybody acquainted with the data set and really understand what is it and what it's not. But that just also gave the opportunity to like come out of it with something that like was yours. Like you took a project from start to finish and came out with like what you needed and what you thought was the best way of using these data. And you know, like because of like the long format, like if people had questions, they could ask each other. If they needed to spend an hour on Stack Overflow, they did that too. And so that was like a really like great experience, because then also because we were all sitting in a room together and conversing, taking breaks, and then going back into it. It was like a really great like experience to just like learn about data and programming together.
And you, Emily, would you structure your data science class?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've taught educational psychology and I've taught a single day R classes, but never a whole semester. So that's kind of fun to dream about that. Everybody's had really good ideas here. They shared already. I think one thing that would be important is I would want to really figure out what everyone's goals are for the course, the students' goals. Like people are bringing up, it's really important for a learner to have some ownership over the process, and they'll care about it a lot more if I'm not saying, here's this data set, conduct this analysis, and then this analysis, and then this analysis. That can get kind of boring if you have no interest in it. So I would want to have a lot of learner choice whenever possible, acknowledging that would also introduce some differences and might make more work for me, because if everybody brings their own data, then everybody has different problems that we need to solve. So, but I think that would be a really good kind of training ground, because otherwise when you get out into the real world and you're trying to use data on your own and it doesn't look neat and it doesn't look like the one in your book, you feel discouraged and like maybe you're doing something wrong. So I would want to make sure that those experiences happen where I can be there to guide people and normalize, look, you had this problem, and so did this person, and so did this person, and this is just what data looks like, and we can figure out ways to deal with it. So that would be one approach that I would take, but I would need a lot more time to plan my course.
Well, this is kind of thing that I like. Everybody here has a different way to approach the same problem, as we can see. And that's the same thing that happens in the book that you have wrote. See, if you can think about the chapters in the walkthroughs, that's exactly the same thing. Everybody has a different way of wondering what to do with this data and going through it and doing it as a problem-based learning. One thing that I thought I will look for the book, and that was missing for me, it was exactly the challenges or the exercises that you mentioned, Jesse. We don't have exercises in the book because it's written for teachers, so as I can understand. But we can think about it. If you have to do a second edition like Isabella was planning, you can think about making a book for the challenging teachers, or the book for the teachers that are going to teach data science as well, not only to learn themselves, as the book is for, but to teach it. And this is the kind of thing that I would like to go. I go to my classrooms and say, do one thing that really scares you. And this is the thing that scares me, that you have to go out from my class with something that's going to be applicable from you. You can apply it right besides in the next class or in the next day. So that it comes to your day life to do and use R. And that's the kind of thing that I love in the book, because it teaches me always something new. And I already learned R a bit. And as I told you, I'm used to use the book, R for Data Science, the Wickham and Grudem Bible, as I can say, because it's before Wickham and after Wickham, as Isabella has said. Side versus something, and we have to learn about it. I teach data science for not data science and not even programmers. And this is the way that I can motivate them to go there and to have something to use in the next day. And this is why I thought it was missing in the book, all marked down in the first beginning. It's easy to use. People know Word and then can understand. They can put the notes together and they will not they will not need any paper. See, they can do it online. They can do it with you. They can do wherever they are, and they can even share it in GitHub and so on. And they can contribute each other for the paper so that it comes better. And the second thing that I would like to go through is the notebook, and then from the book down, so they can collect the things. And also, I like the way that you do it in problem-based learning. So give them something to scare them, as you said, giving them the hackathon that Isabella suggests. But also, something is needed, that he can go out from the class and think, I know something new that I can apply tomorrow in the next class. See, and start using R. That's something that I was thinking, but I'm old. I know old-fashioned way that you need to understand and get things so that you can get used to them. I love the chapter in social, I forgot it, like Twitter and social media. It's very nice to work with teach teenagers this way, because they will love to do things like this and go through the different hashtags that they interest them and go for it. And things like I didn't understand you. Sorry, Joe.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I wanted to ask you a question.
No, don't mind. I don't mind. I maybe don't know, but that's just something different.
What's data science like in Brazil? So
What
Jesse,
is
you've been to Brazil.
the current time?
What's doing data science like for you and your colleagues, and what's data science like in Brazil? I'm just curious.
A lot of people love to do data science over here, and they have a lot of different subjects also, like in states and everywhere, like politics, policies, and public policies and things like this. We have several groups and Slacks and even in Facebook. I myself have a blog in Learn that's in Facebook, and that's the origin for this channel, for example. See, but as I told you before, I just go from the first beginning of the book to the end of the book and come back to the beginning, because I have a new semester with a new class, and I have to give them the same subjects, and that's why I didn't go further. Yeah. But while doing research, I always have my chance to go further and try something new. And I'll go through the book, and probably my new course will come to be with this book. You know it? Data Science in Education with R. I have been with some authors, and they are very good on speaking with us. Unfortunately for us, we already spent our hour. See? And might be that our audience is already a little bit tired right now, because it's 9:30 here in Brazil, and it's time for dinner. So supper, maybe. Okay? I'll tell you, I was very, very, very impressed with your book. I like it too much. And I think you're going to have lots of sales, or at least seeing the internet. I'm going to put in this YouTube descriptions the site, and even the site for Rootlet, so that they can buy it also, not only going for the internet for it. But for sure, I'm going to use the book, or at least some chapters of it, in my next course, because I have to prepare everything so that I can change it. I don't know which kind of platforms do you use to teach. I would like to know. You said from RStudio.io, but I think it's better not to use it right in the beginning. It's easy for our ladies because they're using a lot, but lots of people have a lot of trouble going into the RStudio.io as well. What kind of, do you use Classroom, Schoolage? What kind of LMS system would you like to use? You understand it? No?
Yeah,
Just
I've used an LMS. Oh no, I was going to say I haven't used an LMS when I've taught because it's always been shorter workshops. So I think Josh might be the one who has. Yeah, I mean I've used RStudio Connect. Is it Connect a little bit? It's the online service. But
Cloud. RStudio Cloud. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I love it. Isabella, have you used it? Do you have experience with it?
Just a little bit.
I didn't use it yet.
Yeah.
Myself, I didn't use it yet because I have everything done in Schoology, and it's easier for me to have it over there. Now, see, old people is difficult to change. It's more easy to the new ones. And as I told you, we're coming up to the time to say goodbye. And I would like to give you, all of you, each a time, of course, to say goodbye for our people over here and to invite them to the book, all right? Let's start with Isabella this time.
Sure. Thank you all so much. I really appreciate the time to get to chat with you. I'm on Twitter. I'm IV as in Victor, ELASQ3. And I would love to hear from you. And yeah, maybe we can share the link for the Slack channel, our Twitters, and any other like relevant information so that we can keep in touch.
Thank you. Emily, your turn.
Sure. Hi. Yes, I echo Isabella's sentiment. Thank you all for watching. I'm also on Twitter. My first initial and then my last name, eFreer20, if you can find me. I used to be eBoV09, but I changed it because I got married. I'm the same person. But yeah, thanks everybody for your interest in the book, and we'd love to hear from you.
Thank you, Jesse, for this wonderful connection and opportunity. It's been really fun. Thank you, Ariel, for your questions and taking the time to read the book so thoroughly, and for your suggestions. I think a few of them are provocative, including writing the second version. So thank you for pushing us. I found that very rewarding, so thank you. Third, if anyone is interested, yourself or others, Ariel, I'll say I, but I think I mean we. I'd love to support. I'll say we. You all can get to me after. We'd love to support a team that was interested in translating it into Portuguese, if that would be helpful. If not, and if it's fine in English, then please excuse me for even suggesting it. But if there's people who would be interested in that, we'd love to support that effort.
Oh, I would love to be a supporter in Portuguese for your book. No problem at all. As well as if you would like, and Multilevel will permit, we would like to traduce it as well, as people have done in Spanish for the Wickham book, and it will be very nice to have it in Portuguese as well. And what about you, Jesse? That's time for saying goodbye again, and that's not very good. I always missing you. See, although you're reachable on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, everywhere, but I would like you to say some words, and even in Portuguese if you can.
Thank you so much for having us and for everybody watching. It's always wonderful to talk with my friends from Brazil. I miss you. I can't wait to go back to Brazil. Estou practicando português. And thank you so much for supporting us. Ciao.
Ciao. Thank you very much, every one of you, for coming for this opening night. And it won't be a forgettable night. It's going to be unforgettable. See, as it's going to be written in words as in data science and education. And for you that are over here, I really recommend this book. Go through it and study. That's the only thing you get from life. That's the only thing you get at all. Study a little bit more, get some knowledge, and be with us next month with a new challenge. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Obrigada.